Today we're going to be learning how the Great Depression ended. Remember, this has been about 10 years of difficult decision making, not having food on the table, not having a place to sleep. For many Americans, it's been very, very difficult. So the president and Congress enact some laws and some programs that are supposed to help end the Great Depression, and that's what we're going to learn about today. So let's start on Chapter 5, How Did the Great Depression End? The Great Depression finally ended in 1940. That year, the rate of unemployment fell, meaning that more people had jobs again, and factories started getting busy, getting people working and giving them paychecks. While there are, of course, many factors that were involved in ending the Great Depression, we will look at two of them: the New Deal pushed forward by President Roosevelt and the outbreak of World War II. The New Deal. The New Deal was a series of laws and acts announced in May 1933 and later passed by President Roosevelt and Congress in order to stimulate growth in the economy and to help end the Great Depression. They were focused on creating jobs, protecting Americans, and on helping the banks. For his first 100 days in office, from March of June to June of 1933, FDR worked with Congress to save the nation. As one political commentator of the time later said, "At the end of February, we were a congeries of disorderly, panic-stricken mobs and factions. In the 100 days from March to June, we became again an organized nation, confident of our power to provide for our own security and to control our own destiny." Let's look at a few of the laws passed during this period that helped end the Great Depression. So the first one is the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or FDIC. When you go into a bank, you will probably be able to see signs that say Member FDIC, so this is what it stands for. This program was created in 1933 as part of the New Deal. It guaranteed the safety of deposits made with banks of up to $250,000. If anything should happen to the bank, the account holder's money would be protected. This program helped to protect both banks and citizens from the devastating consequences of bank runs. We have the Gold Reserve Act, which made it into law on January 30th of 1934. This act was an important step in moving away from the gold standard. Do you remember how the gold standard made it difficult for the Federal Reserve to print more money and to help people pay off their debts? With this act and others, the government got more gold and then had more freedom to print money. This allowed them later to not base the value of their currency anymore on gold, but rather on fixed rates established by the government. This let workers earn large salaries to pay off their debts from the 1920s and the 1930s. The Social Security Act. This act protected people who had lost their jobs, who were older and could no longer work, and who were widows or orphans. With this new law, many of the people who had suffered so much during the Great Depression started to get real help from the government. They got money to help them buy food, they received help with housing, and even got jobs. Next, the National Labor Relations Act. It was made into law on July 5, 1935. This law allowed workers to form unions if they felt that they were being taken advantage of by their companies. Instead of having to work in dangerous conditions for small paychecks, the workers could now negotiate with their bosses for better pay and for better working conditions. This was a big step in getting industrial America productive and profitable again. Then we have the Works Progress Administration. Beginning in 1935, this program helped upwards of 3 million Americans at a time to find well-paying jobs. They would take care of building facilities like schools, roads, and bridges in order to benefit the community and to make some money for their families. This program lasted until 1943, when most of the workers had gotten other jobs in wartime America. These programs, and many others that were passed as part of Roosevelt's New Deal, helped the United States economy to get on its feet again. Instead of just living on the streets looking for food, Americans were now working hard manufacturing quality products and constructing the nation's infrastructure, like roads, dams, bridges, and so on. America felt useful again, and for the first time in many years, they had enough money to buy the things that they needed. They had clothes, food, and a house of their own. Although there was a brief recession in 1937, the upward climb out of the Great Depression was slow and steady. However, there was another big factor which brought American unemployment to an end: the outbreak of World War II. So now, the outbreak of World War II. In the late 1930s, American officials were starting to get worried about some of the more extreme politicians that they were seeing in Europe. Men like Adolf Hitler, Chancellor of Germany, and Benito Mussolini, the Prime Minister of Italy, had started to scare nearby nations with their aggressive words and threats. Hitler even spoke of a Third Reich or Third Kingdom that Germany was destined to be head of. He felt that his people were a master race that should dominate the rest of the world. President Roosevelt was afraid that a war was coming soon. In fact, after Hitler invaded Poland on September 1st, 1939, thus starting World War II in Europe, the American government began making preparations of their own, just in case they too had to fight. Although they did not join the war for almost 2 years, Americans got busy right away making tanks, planes, and guns in factories across the country. This created lots of new jobs. Although the US government had to go into debt to pay all of these workers, it was money well spent because it helped the economy to rebound. As all of the workers had more money, they started to spend it at local businesses, large and small. These businesses made greater profits, their stock prices went up, and everyone had what they needed. Although the outbreak of World War II was not the single factor that ended the Great Depression, the jobs that it gave unemployed Americans and the money they earned certainly were both very important to improving the economy. Yes, the Great Depression had finally ended and America had survived. I can't even imagine what a relief that would have been for those people. So, your assignment is going to be to look at this table. I described a law or a program on the left from the reading, and you just need to tell me the name of that law or act or program on the right. Um, Go back in the reading for that information, please. The last question you have is, how did the outbreak of World War II help the Great Depression? Please use complete sentences. Please let me know if you have any questions.